Hey, my name is Chris Castor. I'm a filmmaker and artist from Oklahoma. I'm also an official nominee and award winner of some of the past New York City Drone Film Festivals and the AirViews Drone Video Awards. I work full-time for a faith-based company called the Skit Guys. We create short films and other media content under our brand, and we use that content to assist local churches in the work that they do. Our work goes all over the world, and I'm very proud of the work we do there. I'm also a freelance filmmaker in the film industry. I have a degree in the fine arts with an emphasis in painting, and after college I got into motion graphics and visual effects, which led me to the film industry. Now I work full-time in the industry, and I am just super excited to be a part of the New York City Drone Film Festival this year and to get to share with you a little bit about shooting with visual effects in mind. So let's get started. What is visual effects? Visual effects, or VFX, is a process of creating or manipulating imagery outside of a context of live-action filmmaking. The shot needed may be too dangerous to shoot, it may be too expensive to shoot, or the world may not exist for you to shoot. VFX could include scenery from a different planet, giant robots or monsters, explosions, screen replacements, and a whole host of other possibilities used to create a specific shot a filmmaker needs. VFX are not special effects. The term special effects is sometimes used for VFX. However, special effects are practical effects that happen on set or in camera. Examples include fake gunshots, blood effects, wounds, explosions, makeup of some kind, and a whole lot more. They are not the same thing, however. VFX and special effects often work in conjunction with each other to enhance each other, but they're not the same thing. The use of VFX can be traced back to the 1900s when films like the 1933 King Kong used stop-motion puppets to create their monster for their films. There's movies like Star Wars that use various forms of VFX to create their worlds, including miniature models, matte paintings, and more. Films started using green screen and blue screen to create other illusions, removing the background. And we could go on and on about how movies like Jurassic Park, The Matrix, Titanic, and others continued to push the boundaries in the realms of VFX. New ground is broken every day with faster computers and faster graphic cards. Virtual reality and real-time rendering is awesome, and VFX is really more accessible than ever to everyday filmmakers. So it's a great skill you can add to your toolkit. Just as there are many jobs within filmmaking, there are many jobs within the VFX world as well. There are generalists who do a lot of different jobs within VFX, and there are people who do very specific jobs and rarely leave that area. Different VFX artists and studios use a variety of different software depending on their specific job or purpose, or even their familiarity with that software. In most cases, multiple programs are used in the process of even creating one shot. A few of the most common programs used in VFX are Adobe After Effects and some of the other Adobe Creative Suite like Photoshop or Premiere. Nuke is another compositing program, but it's node-based. 3D programs like Maya, Cinema 4D, Houdini, ZBrush, Unity, Blender, and others are also very popular. They have their own plugins and rendering engines that VFX artists or 3D artists prefer, and that's just even scratching the surface of what all is out there. Just as there are many jobs in VFX, there are many programs that you use to accomplish these specific jobs. My main experience is with Adobe After Effects and Cinema 4D. I'm still learning some of these other industry standard programs, but for the sake of this video, we're going to be working inside programs that are most familiar to me. So keep in mind there's also some free options out there. Programs like Blender, Blackmagic Fusion, Houdini, DaVinci Resolve, and Nuke are some great free options. Some of them have some limitations, not completely free, but some of them do not, and either way there are great ways to get into VFX without breaking the bank. There's also a lot of great resources for VFX assets, and a VFX asset is an image or footage or 3D object that you could purchase or maybe even get for free to use in your shot. Often they have an alpha channel where the background of the footage has been removed for easy compositing into your footage. Examples might include footage of fog or rain, muzzle flashes, fire, explosions, and more. Video Copilot has some great footage, plugins, and tutorials. Action VFX and Triune Digital are a couple others I've used from time to time. Red Giant makes some great plugins, and there's tons of places you could look depending on your specific need. So when you have an idea for a film that involves VFX, how do you make that a reality? Especially if you're new to that area of visual effects. If you've been a filmmaker or a creative for any time at all, you at least have some idea of how to do that. And trust me, I'm still learning how to do that every day. But the idea is where it all starts. Dream about an idea with no restrictions, or at least with limited restrictions on what you want to create. That's what I do. Then work backwards to an achievable goal. I think sometimes as filmmakers we're instantly thinking about the budget or the crew that we don't have. We're thinking about the insane amount of work that it takes to pull off this idea. And yes, those are real considerations. We need to be thinking about those things. But being discouraged by those restrictions at the onset can sometimes kill your idea before you have some time to think through it. So don't be discouraged in that way. Sometimes it's not going to be possible to do the idea you originally dreamt, but it still may be possible to do in another way. You may not have the ability to pull off some crazy Hollywood visual effects shot, but you may be able to pull it off in a different way that's just as effective. When I have an idea, I try to play to my strengths. I'm completely aware that there are far better filmmakers than myself all over this planet. I know some of them. They can write better stories, they can shoot better footage, and create better visual effects. But there are some things I am good at. And there are things that I get better at every day by enjoying the process of filmmaking and the learning that comes with it. Creating visual effects is something I enjoy. Drones are something I enjoy using as a filmmaking tool. Those are some of my strengths. So I ask myself, how can I use those strengths to tell a story and include them in what I'm doing or creating? This is all part of the process of coming up with an idea and refining your idea to something that you're excited about and something that's achievable. So once we have a plan, let's talk about how we make it happen, specifically with visual effects in mind. So let's say your film needs a character that can fly. How do we make a character fly with visual effects? How do the pros do it? First of all, maybe they use a green screen or a blue screen and they rig some harness that gets the character, the talent up off the ground. And as you're thinking about that, if you're like me on most personal projects I'm doing, I know right away that I can't afford that. I can't afford this rig. I don't have access to something like that. But you still need a flying character. So how do you accomplish it? Maybe you shoot against a cheap green bed sheet with cheap lights and you frame your character in such a way where you can't see their feet. I have done that before. Maybe you have a friend who can weld and you get this friend to build you some weird bicycle seat contraption that your character can set out on and it gets them off the ground so it looks like they're floating. I've done that before too. Maybe you build a seesaw out of wood and you use it to raise and lower your talent into frame. This would be a practical or special effect, by the way, and I have done that before as well too. There are lots of ways you could potentially achieve this effect, but you have to know what you need for your film and think through how you can achieve it. What tools do you have at your disposal? Some of the most rewarding learning experiences I've had as a filmmaker have been when I don't have access to everything I think I need. In other words, limitations have really taught me to use what I have at my disposal. Now don't get me wrong, I love having a great script, a big budget, a crew, and gear when working on a project. But rarely do I have all of those things, and with VFX this has certainly been the case with personal projects for sure. There's always been some tool, some software, or desired look that I cannot achieve just simply because it's not at my disposal. So I have to work with what is. I often shoot personal shorts with friends and family as talent or crew, and I've had to create visual effects in the best way I knew possible at the time. A great example would be my short film Heads Up. I had this big idea of a short film with no dialogue that kind of felt like an old cartoon with slapstick humor. My actor and all the crew were local friends and family from the rural area I live in. My locations were my grandmother's house and a big room at the church I attend. My prop drone was mine. I borrowed a remote from a local realtor friend so I could fly my drone and the actor could use the prop remote. I have a CG bird in the short film that's one of the characters, and because I'm not an animator or a character model, I purchased this 3D bird from Turbo Squid. The bird came with a set of canned animations built into the rig already, and I know enough about how to make that work, so I made it work. I shot the whole thing with gear that I owned or had easy access to already. My brother-in-law helped with sound, and I did basically everything else. It was a ton of work, a really tight schedule, but it was a great project. It was a lot of fun to make. The pros of working this way are that you can be affordable. You can make it on the cheap. You can bring in people who may not be in the film world, but believe in the work you do, or maybe they just want to be a part of what you're doing, something creative. It definitely forces you to be creative, and it always teaches you something about filmmaking. Now there's a few cons to working this way. The white balance in this particular film and the color grade in this particular film are horrible. Working so quickly without a film crew, I missed white balancing on a few shots, and I had some flares from the sun. And because I had to use a canned 3D bird model, I was limited to some of the action the bird could do. And really, the bird just doesn't look super real. Might play into my cartoon thing a little bit. There's some other things I don't love about the film, but overall those restrictions helped me fail, learn, and grow as a filmmaker. And overall I'm really proud of the work I did.
How to make a video.
What do?
You add it and then cookie dough. I'm thinking about making a video, but it's a surprise. And it does not have instructions or plans.
So you're just gonna wing it?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to show you kind of inside some of the project files for some of my films. I'm going to start with my film Cardboard Cadet. This is the first drone film I made. It was the summer of 2017. My son Kai and I made this. Drone film festivals weren't even really on my radar. We just made this as a fun project for he and I to do together, and just something to teach him about creativity and hard work, all of that, and have some fun with my new drone that I had got. So I'm going to run you through 3 of my favorite shots from the short film. You can watch the full thing on YouTube. It has been in several drone film festivals all over the world, and really simple short film, but I'm proud of it. It's a lot of fun, and the visual effects aren't the most amazing things in the world in it. It's not the most cinematic video, but it's a video with heart, and it's a lot of fun. And so I'm going to show you here some of the shots from this. So this shot right here that's rendering out, this is a shot where Kai is trying to escape the plane that's chasing him around his hometown, flying his cardboard airplane. I'm going to show you kind of how I made this shot. All right, so this is a shot here where Kai is trying to escape a airplane that's chasing him and trying to shoot him down. So I love this shot just because of the action in it. The airplane spins and you have the really cool dirt charges and the tracers hitting the ground and exploding as the airplane's kind of right on his tail. So it's just a fun action shot, okay? So let me kind of walk through what I did here to create this shot, okay? So first of all, this is the original plate, the original footage. This is, drone footage right here. So basically I stood on the ground there and I held my drone and I kind of used it as a gimbal, shot the footage I need. I have several of these little tracers that I made, okay? So these are just simple footage that I made. I believe I used Video Copilot's Saber plugin, and I just made this little looping element that looks like a tracer around from a gun. And so I have these as 3D footage throughout the video, and they are the effect right here that's flying, hitting the ground and exploding, okay? And so I have several of those, and they kind of are color-coded orange here. Next up, I have these firecracker hits. And so I'll show you right here. If I turn on my background footage, you can see that a little bit better. but basically these are where my tracer rounds are impacting the ground. So I have these great Video Copilot dirt charges. Kind of masked off the bottom of them a little bit and color corrected them to match my footage. It's kind of Oklahoma, we have red dirt here, so you can see this kind of red dirt that kind of matches these places where you see the dirt. And then I also use this Video Copilot Reflect plugin to try to kind of just fake a shadow. You could do that any number of ways, but that was just a quick way for me to do it. The layer of my son flying his airplane. But let me show you how I created that effect of my son. Obviously I couldn't get footage of him really spinning in the airplane. So what I did is I used Video Copilot's Element 3D, and I also use Cinema 4D, and I created this really pretty awful little 3D model. I don't claim to be a 3D modeler, and I don't claim to be a 3D expert by any means, but I was able to create this in Cinema 4D, and I used Adobe Fuse to create this little model that kind of looked at least somewhat like my son from a distance. I took pictures of the real prop airplane we created, and I painted those pictures on in Photoshop. And so that's basically it. And I created this just really rough 3D model. It's nothing spectacular by any means, but I created it to give myself the ability to create some more dynamic shots from time to time in this short film. So that's what that is. And when you add all that stuff together with the speed of the camera move and all of that, it's really hard to tell that it's really just a pretty terrible 3D model job. Okay, so I have that, more dirt charges, more tracer rounds, all of that together. When you throw that together, you get something like this. With just utilizing the resources I had available to myself, it turned out pretty good. All right, this is the tower passover shot, is what I call it. It's one of my favorite shots. If you live in Oklahoma or Kansas or Texas, anywhere around there, you'll see these grain elevators. They're really common. I guess they could be common in other parts of the United States as well, but very common here. And especially in our town, they're kind of an icon for our small rural community. And so I kind of wanted to use it as a location for this short film. So I love this shot for a lot of reasons. One, just because the shot's really dynamic and cool, even without the plane flying over. But then when you incorporate the plane and the shadow from the plane, all of that, it ties together just to be a really fun shot. Let me kind of break down this shot for you as well, okay? So this is the background plate that we have. Just flying my Phantom 4 over this tower, this grain elevator. That footage is tracked, so you can see here we have these camera tracks. Did a really good job of tracking it. This is the shadow layer. So this is actually one of the most exciting things about this shot to me. I know it's kind of nerdy to be excited about a shadow, but let me show you why. So once again, inside of Element 3D, so this texture is not right, so just ignore that. Using a website called Drone Deploy, I believe was the one I used, I flew a 360 pattern around this grain elevator, and I created this 3D mesh with that. It might be easier if I just did something like that. So I created this 3D mesh, and it did a really good job. It's pretty incredible the detail it captured. And so I used this 3D model basically to create the shape of the tower that I could cast shadows on. So what's really cool about this is I used that 3D model that I made from my drone of the tower. I tracked it into the footage using the camera tracking data, and I matched it up as close as I possibly could. And that's the result I got, these little shadows down here. So you can see the shadows fall in just about the right places to make it look like this plane is actually flying over the tower. And I actually used that kind of crude 3D model I made from the previous shot, this one right here, and used it to cast the shadow onto the 3D tower. And so then when I only show that shadow and I don't show the 3D tower, it has the appearance that it's falling on the real tower. You can see it's not perfect. So you can see right in here, the tower doesn't line up perfectly. My 3D model doesn't line up perfectly. You can see right here, there's probably more places if you look hard, but when you play this shot at full speed, you don't really see it. But that shadow adds a ton to the shot, I think anyway. Okay, let's look at the green screen footage real quick. We have this shot of my son here, and it is right here. So it's just a transparent layer there. I have kind of this fake prop that's spinning, which is just basically a gray solid that I put there to these original shots, and I can turn off the mask and show you what they look like and turn off all these effects. My son here on a green screen in our tiny living room that we lived in several years ago, and my wife with her pregnant belly. Please do not tell her this is in this video or she will kill me. It's a cheap bed sheet, cheap lights I have. We have a little box here that we have the plane tilted back on because we couldn't even get my camera above it to shoot down on it. So it's most definitely using what few resources we had to make that happen. And so what I did is I did the key. That is the only part of the original footage that is being used. The rest are just stills of the plane by itself. You can see as we scrub here, it doesn't move, but then when I add back in that piece on top, it gives us all of that. So basically I did that because this by itself was going to be really difficult just to key out with all these, the overhang of my wings. If I show you again here, you can see that my wings were overhanging up. My green screen is lit very poorly, so not even everything will key out. But I don't have to key out everything. I just have to key out this little section right here because it's the only part that really moves. So if you turn everything back on, you can see the key is not terrible for as bad as the the quality of the footage was to key out in the first place. You can see there. So pretty cool. It's a fun shot. One of my favorite shots from the short. All right, this is another favorite shot of mine from the film. Actually, this whole series of shots kind of leading up to and after this are really fun if you haven't seen the short film. So basically what we have here is my drone flying up next to the towers, and I'm using that perspective to make it look kind of like we are flying backwards at a vertical angle. Really it's just my camera straight down. Same thing from the previous shot, kind of the same kind of green screen footage where we keyed out the poorly lit green screen around my son, and he's doing his funny face there. So let's kind of walk through this shot real quick. Here's the original plate. The footage actually is really pretty cool footage. So we start real low and we go up, and this is kind of cool here. These birds live on the top of this tower and they fly around it a lot. So I caught that a couple times, which was pretty neat. We have this plane crash. And if you're noticing a theme here, I use Video Copilot's Element 3D a lot. Once again, because I don't consider myself a true 3D artist. But basically what I did here is I used that same 3D model that I generated from the drone of the tower, and I tracked that into the shot. I'm using that to cast a shadow of the plane and of Kai's plane onto the tower. And this is just a free 3D model I picked up off of line somewhere. I don't even actually think it's an airplane that shoots. Someone told me that once after I'd made this short film, so it's kind of funny. Basically, this is just an Element 3D model I can show you right here. It is this, I think it's called like a Stuka or something. So it's just that model. I used in Element 3D. And as it impacts the wall, because once again, I'm not a 3D artist and I don't know about destructing 3D models and all of that in a program like Houdini or something like that, or Maya. I just use some deform properties inside of Element 3D to kind of make it look like it's impacting the side of the wall. When you add the explosions and everything, it kind of hides some of the fact that the airplane is not really breaking up. It's just kind of deforming. So that's the airplane. I have these explosions. These are all from Video Copilot Action Essentials, and I just kind of layered them and use a screen blending mode. I have, once again, the shadow of Kai's plane flying up, just to tie that in there a little bit better. I have Kai's footage. Once again, there it is, me blowing a leaf blower on him, a poorly lit, cheap green screen. We have the light to cast the shadow. We have the camera from the camera tracker. You can see all of those little tracking points there. I have these optical flares, which are also a Video Copilot product. And what I did with these, you can see here, is that I used those to kind of blend my son into the explosion. So when the explosion happens, if you don't have these, you kind of lose some of that light wrap that happens when a bright light is behind you. And so I used these instances of optical flares to kind of add that. Once again, I probably would do it a little bit different now, since I've got a few years of this behind me since this video was created, but I think it did the job for the time being, utilizing the resources I had available to me at the time, or that I was familiar with at the time. It's a fun shot. A really fun short film. Really proud of the job my son did, and of the memories we got to create there. Not to mention the film is done pretty well, and so excited about that. All right, now I'm going to show you inside the project file of a short film I did called The Last Droney. And it's just like it sounds, it's a droney, but I wanted to use a droney to tell a story. So typically I was seeing these dronies where we had a person sitting in a beautiful location and they fly back and reveal that they're in this beautiful location. And I wanted to see if I could do something different. So I did this short film called The Last Droney, and basically it's using a drone to try to figure out a way of escape in a zombie apocalypse. The last time this guy flies his drone out away from himself and his friends that are trying to escape. So it's just me and a few friends, which I can show you right here, who all are the real people in this video. So we have our background plate, me, my brother-in-law, Nathan, my good friend Shane. He also plays in my film Heads Up, which we'll talk about as well. My brother Daniel, a good friend Michael, a friend named Ethan, and a friend named Kenton. They're really great guys. This guy right here runs a really awesome haunted house here in Oklahoma. So if you like haunted houses and you want to road trip next year to come to Oklahoma to a haunted house, it's a really good one. And these guys work with him out at the haunted house. And so they were thoroughly enjoying being zombies. And so we shot this on a super cold day. You can see from my face here that it's freezing. And we just tried to shoot it as quickly as possible. And so flew the drone straight back and did kind of a reveal of this kind of industrial area in our town, this Main Street area and this industrial area. Okay, and so you can see in the shot I have moving cars. The town is definitely not being attacked by zombies. You can tell it's alive and well, but we try to give that impression as we add the VFX to this shot. So we have the background plate. Okay, we have a smoke plume. We have a fire. We have another smoke plume in the background there. We have a smoke plume that is over on this side of the screen. And these smoke plumes are just smoke plumes I got from either Video Copilot or Action VFX or something like that. So great places you can look. We have some of our crowd simulation zombies right here. So I actually didn't do the crowd simulation for this particular video. I tried to do it, but I'm not a 3D artist, so I had a gentleman named Matt Gardaki in Oklahoma City help me with this crowd simulation. He did a great job. You can see here I had to kind of add some rotoscoped versions of the real people in the short film. That way we could cover up some of the zombies that intersected with them. There is a bunch of blood and muzzle flashes. We can show you all these. There's a bunch of them. So every time one of my friends fired a prop gun, I went in and did muzzle flashes and blood and all of that. So you can kind of see those playing through there. The helicopter crash, which is on this side of the video. So once again, that's just an Element 3D model that I animated. We have that. We have sparks for it. We have smoke for it. And it looks like those sparks might, yeah, the footage is missing. Apologize for that. It's been a long time since I opened this project. Kind of see what the helicopter looks like when you add it in and add the color grade and all of that. I had a guy message me one time after I released this and say something like, in real life, a helicopter would have destroyed that drone if it flew that close to it. And I said, in real life, zombies don't exist either, so. We have some sparks with the helicopter that kind of fly around there. We have the title, which I kind of ripped from The Walking Dead. Some glitches, more fire and smoke and all of that. So basically when you put that all together, it looks something like this. And I apologize, there's so much going on in here, it won't render very fast. Pretty fun little short. And then we have the section where we kind of glitch, and as we glitch, we see that we're on the iPad that controlled the drone, and we see the shadow of someone walking by. I don't know if that's a survivor or a zombie. And then we glitch to kind of the credit section of this, and this fun credit section where we did another crowd simulation. I just did this crowd simulation in Element 3D, so it's not as good as the other one was, but basically we all just held super still and flew the drone back. And when you put all of this in there together, it has the appearance that it's a frozen in time shot. So I just thought that could be really fun for this. It was a lot of fun to make, and it's been received fairly well. I have some ideas for more dronies that I want to do that are more story-based, and so hopefully in the next year or two I can start doing those and submitting those to festivals as well. Being able to challenge yourself to tell a story in a really short time with kind of one camera movement. It's a fun challenge for sure. So maybe that's a challenge to some of you out there to see if you can tell a story with a short droney. All right, now we're in the project file for my short film called Heads Up. As I mentioned, this film was a ton of fun to make, but I encountered a lot of problems with color in this one. You can see right here in this shot that I had a pretty significant lens flare going on that I didn't see as I was originally shooting this thing, and so kind of made it difficult to grade, and I wasn't as happy with the grade, especially the few times I've seen it on a big screen. It doesn't play well. It looks all right online, but on a big screen I haven't been real super happy with the color on it. Just something you learn as you go and you get better at. And yeah, I think it's a fun film. So I'm going to show you a couple of shots that I really like from this film. All right, so in this shot, my friend Shane he gets hit in the face with the drone. Previously, he's kind of playing around with this drone. He's excited to take it on its first flight, but he gets a little careless and distracted by a bird, and he ends up flying the drone into his face. So Shane just does a fake fall here. We have a blood kind of mist there. So as he gets hit, you see the blood splatter. Have another one that I add in there that just a little bit more impact. I add in a cork hit, and these are all Video Copilot elements once again that I can show you what they look like by themselves, but basically it's this just mist. Cork hit is this just kind of debris. And as I mentioned earlier in this series, these are all kind of elements you can purchase and buy to kind of use in your footage that you don't have to shoot yourself. So it's the impact and the blood and debris. We have the drone. So this drone is actually a 3D model of a drone that I put into the footage with Element 3D. I have one of the props flies off. So when it hits, the prop kind of comes loose, flies off. And so I just kind of hand animated all that, impact and spin. So as soon as it hits him in the face, it spins and the prop flies off. Then we have another cork hit. So just another impact. So we shot all that and realized that he had not been holding the remote. So I created just a simple remote model in Cinema 4D that looked kind of like the remote. And once again, I hand animated the remote falling onto the ground. So not a great animation, but in the shot you don't notice it. He falls on top of it and covers it up. If you notice also in the shot, we have a small bird right here. So in the short film, if you haven't seen it, there's this bird, and it is a character in the film. I kind of wanted this to feel like an old cartoon or something like that, kind of a slapstick comedy. So this bird kind of becomes the demise of my friend. Okay, then we have this box cover. So this box is the DJI drone box, but I made my own kind of fake cover to go on that. Oh, and I forgot, this is how I did a quick cheap animation of the remote crashing onto the ground. So this is Newton Physics, which is a plugin for After Effects, and I kind of just did this quick animation of a box falling, and then I applied that to the 3D remote and did some kind of extra animation to it. So when you put the whole shot together, you have that. Okay, this is probably one of my favorite shots in the whole film. This is right after Shane has got hit, died because of his drone injuries, and then we start to see his body slowly materialize. So you'll see that start to happen right about now. And in the original shot, I have kind of a particle system that kind of pushes out from his body, but because of the age of this project file, it's not working correctly, so I apologize for that. So we have his body kind of distorting and blurring and fading into view. He's got his 3D wings, his halo. This shot is the main background plate, which is Shane just laying there. Have my drone just pushing in on him and then pulling back out. Then we have the box top. So we have this box top that I made that's tracked into the shot. See the world from new heights, which is kind of the joke at the end of the video. Then we have Shane's scars on his face. So I just did a quick track with Mocha, I believe. Did a corner pin and kind of just roughly attached kind of those scars to his face. Then we have Shane materializing as the angel, which is the next piece of footage. There's several things going on there. There's some glow. There is a displacement map, so he's being displaced. There is blur, and he's just starting to realize something's not right. There's my body back behind me. So it's really fun to look at this footage before it was keyed. You can notice the weird shape around his crotch area. Let's see what that is. This is our original shot. And so if you look at this, this is the weird thing I was talking about earlier, where we created, I have a friend who welds, and he created this basically long pole with a bike seat on it. And we covered that in green, and Shane set on that so we could get the illusion of floating. Yeah, he set on this thing for all those shots. He was not feeling good afterwards, but he was a champ and did it. We had to do some weird stuff to kind of fix this area to not leave a huge hole there. So super fun shot. Then I added the wings and the halo with Element 3D. Yeah, just using what I have at my disposal. This was made with a bunch of my friends in just a couple days, and then we had the long process of trying to do all the visual effects for this. But super fun short. Yeah, super fun film. Overall, I'm really happy with it. I learned a lot from working on it. All right, everybody, we're here inside of Adobe After Effects, okay? This is the program I typically use for visual effects and motion graphics. There's a lot of other programs you could use as well, but for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to be inside of Adobe After Effects. So you can download a trial if you don't have it, or if you have the Creative Cloud suite that Adobe has, you should have access to After Effects. Okay, lots of great tools in here to do just about anything you need for visual effects. Okay, so what we're going to try to do first is we're going to try to remove an unwanted object from some of our footage, okay? And specifically, I have some drone footage here I shot from a real estate video I did a year or two ago. And you can see right here, we have the drone shadow kind of traveling along right here. So we want to remove that and make the footage just look nice and clean. I have that example, and then I have this example as well where we have the drone shadow over here. So we're going to see how good a job After Effects can do of removing that object, okay? So to do that, we're going to use a pretty new tool inside of After Effects called the Content Aware Fill. And basically that comes from Photoshop and does a great job in Photoshop for imagery where you can remove unwanted objects, but we also now have it available in After Effects as well. And depending on the footage, it can do a good job or maybe not do as good a job, but we will talk more about that in a second. So how do we make this work? Okay, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to create a mask around this shadow, and then we are going to keyframe animation with the path of this shadow, kind of move along with it. And After Effects is going to use the surrounding pixels and texture to try to fill that hole in, okay? So let me just show you what we're trying to do here, okay? So first of all, I'm going to zoom in to this footage and move around. I'm hitting H on my keyboard to bring my hand up so I can kind of move that around. I'm going to go up here to my tools. I'm going to grab the pen tool. If you're familiar with Photoshop or Illustrator, it's kind of the same thing here. Or you can hit G on your keyboard as well to get it. Click on my footage, and I'm just going to click and create a nice little shape around my shadow. By default, After Effects is going to set our mask to add. So it's just going to add whatever's inside of this. We want to be able to see the whole thing for right now. So I'm going to hit MM on my keyboard, and that's going to bring up my mask properties. Another option I can do is click this little drop down arrow right here, and can find my mask drop down right there as well. So there's my mask. We're going to set this property right here to none. That's going to show our whole piece of footage again. Okay, so we want that. And we're also going to go down here to mask path, and we're going to click this little stopwatch. Okay, that sets a keyframe. You can see right here. And so basically what a keyframe is, if you're unfamiliar with After Effects or keyframes, it's kind of the way by which you do all of your animation. Pretty much all of your animation After Effects utilizes keyframes. So we're going to set a keyframe here. Basically that's telling After Effects at this point in time in my timeline, I want the mask path to be like this shape, and this position. Okay, then I'm going to take my little scrubber here. I'm going to move all the way to the end of my footage, and I'm going to go find where that shadow ended up, and it's right here. So we're going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to hit V on my keyboard to get my selection tool back, and I'm going to drag my mask up here and kind of place it over the shadow up here. Okay? So now you will see that I have a keyframe at the beginning of the footage and I have a keyframe at the end. So if there's not too much movement or inconsistent movement in our shadow or our footage, the mask should stay fairly close to that. We can see right through here it kind of gets off. So what I typically do will go somewhere in the middle of my footage, and then I will adjust my mask accordingly. And then I can come maybe into the middle of those keyframes and adjust my mask accordingly. If you hold down Alt while you grab your mask, it should stay the same. I'm going to go in the middle here, adjust accordingly. And you can keep just doing that as much as you need to, depending on how the mask moves, or rather how the shadow moves. Okay, so let's just look at that. That is pretty good, sufficient for what we're trying to do today. We can hit MM again and set the mask to subtract. Okay, so now you're going to see we have a transparent hole there in our footage. Okay, so right now it looks worse than it did before, but we're going to fix that. We can actually expand our mask a little bit with mask expansion. We'll do that. Go over here to the content aware fill tool. Okay, you can see we have some options here. We have alpha expansion, fill method, range, and then we have generate reference frame, generate filler. Okay, so alpha expansion, you could probably set that, for something like this, maybe to 3 to 5. For stuff with more detail, maybe you go lower. Then the fill method, we would change to object. The range, we want to keep at the work area. Or you could do entire duration. In this case, it doesn't really matter. Generate reference frame is a really cool tool. So if you go to a certain frame anywhere along your timeline here, you can create a reference frame and it will open up that particular frame in Photoshop so that you can paint out basically the object in Photoshop how you want it to be in your footage, and then After Effects will use that frame or frames. You can create multiple frames to help guess kind of what footage is needing to be replaced. So it's a very cool thing. I don't know that we need to do it in this case, but it's a very powerful tool you can do. So clicked on our footage. We have these things set how we want. We're going to hit Generate Fill Layer. You can see here After Effects is analyzing the footage, and it's going to create a layer above our original footage, and it's rendering that now. So it's trying to create that footage now. So once this is done, we're going to be able to see how well this does. Okay, so it's done. So let's play it back here and see how this looks. That's pretty great. I mean, you can kind of see it there if you're paying attention to that spot, but if you are focusing on the house, which is actually what you're supposed to be looking at in this shot, then you would not notice anything at all. So it did a pretty good job here. Let's take a look at our next example, okay? So we have this shot, and the drone is relatively staying in the same place. So we're going to do the exact same thing we did before. Zoom in on our footage here, take our pen tool, so it's G on your keyboard or right up here in your toolbar. Click on our footage, and we are going to just make a rough mask around this. The mask is going to be set to add, so we're going to hit MM on your keyboard, set it to none. That way we can accurately track it. We are going to hit mask path, And we'll go to the end of our footage and we see it move slightly. We're going to switch back to our selection tool and we're just going to adjust that mask. Just kind of, you can basically move this shape in any way you need to make it cover the shadow, and it will work just fine. So now let's scrub back through this. You see we have our keyframe at the front, keyframe at the back. We set our mask path keyframes, and now that mask is slowly moving with the drone shadow. We can just go through here and kind of adjust if we feel like it needs anything. But that should be pretty good. Let's see here. Scrub through. And maybe just kind of slightly stretch that out a little bit there. Okay, so that is going to work. We'll zoom back out. We're going to set our mask back to subtract. So we have our mask created, our empty space generated there, and we're going to go over here to Content Aware Fill, and we're going to do entire duration, object, get all our settings correct, hit Generate Fill. It's going to analyze like it did before. It's going to render. And we are done rendering. So we can play this back here and see what we got. Okay, you can see it does actually a pretty good job. If you are not looking at that area or you don't know that that area was there. So that looks pretty great. Once again, it's not perfect. You can, if you are looking there and you know that that's there, you can see it. But to anybody that's just watching your footage for the first time, they wouldn't notice that. And the same with this shot as well. Now, I will say that this is not an advanced object removal tutorial. There's a lot of great ones on YouTube. You can go check those out. But kind of the idea here, and this is just an intro to this, is that you could remove people from shots. You could remove cars, signs, all different kinds of things from your footage. People do some very complicated removals as well. And there's, like I said, there's people on YouTube that tell you how to do that. Hopefully that was helpful to you. Object removal, you can dive into that a lot deeper online, so check that out. But this is just kind of to get your feet wet and kind of step into that for the first time. All right, we're here on our next tutorial. We're going to talk about sky replacement. So I have an example here of some footage I shot for a realtor that sells land out here in Oklahoma. Lots of just beautiful flat land out here. We're going to use this shot right here and show you how you can replace your sky. Okay, so we have just kind of a plain sky here. Let's say that we wanted a sky with just a ton of clouds in it. So how do we go about that? First of all, I have some cloud footage here, a large image I think I got from a stock site. We're going to scale that down. You can hit S on your keyboard and you can scale it down. Want something like that maybe. Then we're going to hit P on our keyboard. It brings up our position, and we're going to just kind of just move that up there for now. So that's it. Looks great, huh? No, I'm kidding. Let's make this look good, okay? So we got a lot of work here. We're going to take this and just turn it off for now. Our first order of business is we need to track this footage so we can attach the clouds to that tracking data. So that basically the clouds move in a realistic way or close to realistic way as this footage moves, okay? So there's a number of ways we could do that. If you look over here on the right side, we have our tracker. So we have a camera tracker. So basically this is going to try to figure out the 3D move of this camera. And we have track motion, okay? And that's going to be a 2D tracker, okay? We have those two options. After Effects also comes with Mocha, which is a great planar tracker. I'm going to show you two different ways. So first I'm going to track it with Mocha. So I'm going to drag the Mocha plugin onto my footage. We see it right here. I'm going to click this icon here and it brings up my window here. Okay. The trick with the sky replacement is because it's so far back, we're not going to have the same amount of parallax or movement in the scene that we would with something up close. Okay, so we got to find somewhere in our footage that we can track that is going to be relative to where the sky would be, okay? I don't know if this will work or not, but I'm going to try to track these clouds back here, these really subtle clouds. Worst case, we might be able to use like this hill back here. So let's try that. I'm going to take this tool up here, this pen tool, X-spline is what it's called, and we're going to just create a shape around this area we're trying to track here, okay? Try not to get any of that foreground stuff because it could mess your track up, okay? We'll go down here, we see the track option, and we're going to track forward. Let's just see what this does. I don't know if this will work or not, like I said, but we'll see. You can hit stop at any time, and you can adjust your track if you need to. I don't know if we're just getting lucky or if this is doing a good job. Those clouds are very subtle, so I'm surprised it's doing such a good job. All right, we're going to go over here and hit save, file save, or you can just hit this, close that out. Nothing has happened. We got to apply this tracking data to something. So we're going to right click, we're going to go new, null object. A null object is basically a blank placeholder or a blank object that you can do lots of different things with. So we're going to take this null object, we'll call this, if you hit enter on your keyboard, you can rename stuff. We'll call this cloud track 1. Hit enter, back to our Mocha plugin here, and we're going to go to tracking data, create tracking data. It's going to show layer 1 is enabled. Hit OK, and it's creating the tracking data. So you can do corner pin. Corner pin supports motion blur or transform. For this specific tutorial, we'll just do transform. We're going to select our cloud track 1, and we're going to apply export. If we go over here and we hit U, click on our cloud track 1, hit U, you can see that all the data has been applied. All the position, scale, and rotation data has been applied to that null object. If we zoom in here, you can't really tell zoomed out like that. If you zoom in, you can see that it follows that path. And we're going to take our cloud footage, we're going to turn that back on, and we are going to click this little swirly icon right here, which is called a parent pick whip, and we're going to drag the pick whip to our cloud track. So basically what that's doing then is it's taking this cloud footage and it's saying whatever the parent or the cloud track is doing, I want this child to do as well, okay? So now if we play this back, you can see that the footage kind of looks like it's in the background there. Before we go any further, we'll shut both of these off, and we're going to try to track it in a different way as well. So let's go ahead and shut Mocha off as well. You can turn it off and on right there. And we're just going to try to camera track it as well. So we're going to click on the footage and then click on track camera. We're going to come up with this dialog box, and it is going to initialize, and it should start going here pretty soon. There's some options you can choose, like a detailed analysis or different things like that. But for now, let's just see what it does. If we let it go, here it goes. It's starting to analyze the frames. Going pretty quick for 1080p footage. All right, solving the camera now. It should go pretty quickly. All right, now you can see we have all these little trackers here. So, and it looks like it did a pretty good job. So basically what we can do here is we can select any of these little points, or when you get 3 points together, it creates these targets, okay? And so we can take these targets, we can right click, and we can create, first I'll create a set ground plane and origin. And then I'll go back to that one if I can find it again here, and we'll do create solid and camera. Okay, so now if we play this back, you'll see that the footage has been tracked, and that solid that is now a 3D solid is moving with the footage, and it looks like it did a really great job. So first of all, you can use this 3D camera tracker for a lot of great stuff. If you want to put some text floating here, let's say you're doing real estate video and you want to put, the address right here, or a boundary line for the property. You could track your footage and you could do all that, and you could have it moving with the 3D movement of the camera. It's really cool. You can also use it like we're doing to put in a background replacement or to add a 3D object into your scene. It's really powerful. It doesn't always work perfect, but in this case it did a really good job, and so we're going to try that. One thing you'll want to familiarize yourself with if you start doing a lot of 3D tracking is normalizing your scene. And there's a good plugin that will do this. So when you create these 3D scenes, sometimes they have the tendency to be really huge in scale, and so they're kind of hard to work with sometimes. Might not make a lot of sense to you right now what I'm talking about, but if you start doing this a lot, you'll know what I'm talking about. So just keep that in mind. I'm not going to worry about it right now, but keep that in mind. Okay, so when I set the ground plane here, it set our position to 0, 0, 0, 0 in X, 0 in Y, and 0 in Z. We can push things back further in space or bring them forward in space, and that should, in theory, stay on the ground plane. So what we want to do then is we will bring our cloud footage in a second time. We are going to hit, in this case, I need to hit my toggle switches button down here, and we're going to create a 3D layer with that footage. Okay, we're going to hit S, we're going to scale it down, and we're going to hit P. Let's just hit 0 and 0 those all out. And so now we know it's exactly in the center place. Okay, so if we take the Z axis there and we move it way back, then we can move it up some and move it over some, and then we can scale it back up, get that where we want. Hit R on your keyboard, you can bring up rotation. And to keep multiple ones up, I'm holding shift while I hit R or S or P. And I'm just going to kind of straighten this out to my camera. Something like that. You can also grab these handles and you can move it around. Okay, so now if we play this back, we have a similar thing to the second, except it feels like, and this is the scale thing I was telling you about, it feels like it's still way too close. So what we can do here is we can go into our footage, back to our camera tracker. So we'll find a position point, and we can turn up these tracker point sizes here to see them better. We could create, let's see here. So that null is attached to that tree. So let's pick like this really small one back here, create a null, and we'll see what this position is. So you can see this is almost 7,000 back on the Z-axis, and our clouds were only 3,000. So we need to, let's just push this back to maybe something like 10,000. And we will scale that back up, move it over, push it back up here. Something like that. And scale it up a little bit more. Move it up a little bit more. So now we play that back. That looks pretty great. So it could potentially be moving more than it would in real life, but I kind of like that parallax. Kind of makes it feel like the clouds are kind of moving a little bit. But you could push it back further if you wanted more of the feel of this original track we did. that's probably closer to what it would do in real life because it's not moving a whole lot. But I like the look of this. Let's push it back just a tiny bit more. Scale that up. And move it up a little bit more, scale it up a little bit more as well. Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm happy with that. Okay, now we need to figure out how we're going to get rid of this hard line down here. And I'm going to scale that just a little bit more, move it up just a little bit more. So we have a couple options here to get rid of our hard line down there. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this cloud track and this other cloud. So how do we take this harsh line here off the bottom of this and kind of show our trees and everything that we had here? So we could do a couple things. The simple thing would be to go up here to our rectangle tool, and we could make a mask here around our clouds. We could hit MM on our keyboard, bring up the mask properties. We could feather that out. And we're going to have to feather it out quite a bit since the footage is back there so far. And kind of subtract that feather a little bit so we start showing some of those trees. Keep pulling that back. Once again, you normalize your footage, this will be less crazy numbers. Keep bringing that back down a little bit. So now, if we look at this, that looks pretty good, but I feel like the fall off doesn't look really realistic, and of course our colors aren't right. We'll fix that in a second. Something I like to do, a little trick I like to do instead of the mask, so I'm going to take the mask off of my clouds. I'm going to hide those for a second. I'm going to duplicate this layer right here. You can hit Command D on your keyboard for Mac, or you can go to Edit, Duplicate. That's going to duplicate our footage. I'm going to remove those effects off of it because I don't need it. I'm going to add a tint and a levels. So I'm going to go into my effects, color correction, tint. Then I'm going to go effects, color correction, levels. And there's once again, there's lots of different ways you could do this. This is just one that I like for a quick fix. So I'm going to take basically these levels here. I'm going to crunch them. So what I want to happen is I want the tree line to become black, and I want the sky to become white. So something like this is good. And you can see there's gray up here, and we'll fix that in a second. Basically, I just want this stark contrast here between these two. So I'm going to be good with that. I'm going to hit Shift Command C, and I'm going to pre-compose this layer right here. So basically, pre-compose is kind of like creating a new composition inside of your current composition. I'm going to call this Sky Matte. And I'm going to move all attributes into the new composition. So I'm going to hit that, and you can see now here we have this sky matte. Double click on that, and it's going to open that now. You can see I have my original footage in there and the effect on that. I'm going to create a new solid. I'm going to make this solid black. And then I'm going to create a new solid, and I'm going to make this solid white. Okay, I'm going to take both of those and turn them off. So basically I want to get rid of all this gray up here, and then I want to get rid of any of the white in this area. So I'm gonna click on my white layer. I can leave it off, and I'm just going to make a quick mask and try to cut out that gray. So now when I turn this back on, you'll see I have white. Okay. What I want to do though is I want to turn that back off. I'm going to click my mask path, similar to what we did in the shadow removal tutorial. I'm going to set a keyframe. I'm going to go to the end, and I'm just going to adjust this mask where I'm just getting rid of that gray, but I'm not cutting off anything else. So if I play back through this, and I need to adjust that front one, you'll see I'm getting rid of the gray, but I am not touching any of the black or trees or anything like that. So if I turn this back on and play it back, you'll see I have a white sky and a fairly black foreground. So now I'm going to click on my black layer. I'm going to make a mask just something like this, roughly. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm going to hit MM, set a keyframe for my mask path. I'm going to go to the end of the timeline, and I'm going to set another keyframe by moving these around, adjusting it. I hit V for my selection tool, and I'm just going to just slightly adjust these. I don't want to go into the white. I just want to cover that. So if we kind of scrub back through this, it looks like everything stays good there. Yeah, I think that'll work. I'm going to turn my black solid back on. Play this back, and you can see here that I have pretty much a pure white sky and a pure black background. If you notice over here in this little corner, you can see a little bit of the gray is still showing. I could hit MM on my mask, my white solid, and I could kind of feather that out a little bit. Maybe expand it just a tad. And so now if we play that back, you can see you can't really tell that gray is showing up over there. So let me show you what this does now. We can close that composition, go back into this composition, and we have this here. We're going to put the sky matte directly above the footage that we want to remove the background for. I'm going to click on this layer, and I'm going to go down to toggle switches again. I'm going to go over here to track matte. You can see the track matte right there. We're going to set the track matte to Luma matte, and we have the sky. Now if we set it to Luma matte inverted, we have no sky. Okay? So now we can get our cloud layer, turn that back on. We can drop it below our sky replacement background or our footage. And if we hit play now, we have a sky replaced. It looks pretty good. The coloring here is the next thing we need to fix. It doesn't match the original footage. I'm going to go back up here to my footage. I'm going to bring this original plate footage, this original drone shot that I shot. I'm going to drag it below my cloud layer. I'm going to do that for a couple reasons. One, just in case I need to mask anything out or feather anything out, I have this original footage back there to kind of cover up any mistakes. Okay, I'm going to do that. Then I'm also going to take this layer that we got rid of the sky with right here, and I'm just going to hide that for now and turn it off for now. So basically we just have these two layers that we're working with. We can see the color of the sky here, we can see the color of the sky here. I'm going to click on my cloud layer. I'm going to go to effects, and I'm going to go to color correction, Lumetri color, and there is a million different ways you could do this. This is just a quick way I found that it works. It might not be industry standard or anything like that, but if it works for you and you can get it done quickly, use it. You can also use Magic Bullet. Has some great plugins like this. There's other plugins in different programs that do the same thing. There's probably multiple different ways you could do this inside of After Effects. This is just a quick way I've learned. Color wheels, drop that down and you have these kind of shadows, midtones, highlights options here, okay? So basically what I want to do is I want to try to get this looking like that background sky, basically these blue areas, okay? So if I look back at that, it's a lot more purple. This is a really, like, it leans more into the greens of blue. And then I guess too the blue is a little bit darker than the purple here. So we need to adjust all those things. So first of all, I'm going to grab my shadows and I'm going to try to kind of bring those up a little bit to kind of make that blue a little closer to the intensity of this background. So that's starting to get closer. Something you could do too is if you wanted to grab your rectangle tool, you could kind of mask off part of this for the time being just so you can see what you're doing here. So this is still too dark in my opinion. I'm going to bring that up a little bit more. Maybe here too. The midtones, actually maybe the midtones more. You just kind of slightly adjust these things and eye them. Maybe our midtones. You might need to go, just kind of stay neutral maybe. All of this is just trial and error and kind of what looks right to your eye is it's starting to look pretty good. Okay, I'm going to turn this mask off. We'll see where we're at. Let's go ahead and turn back on our kind of foreground layer. Let's play that back. That looks pretty good. I know the color's not exactly right. So if you wanted to take this further, you could try to mimic some of the reflections of the clouds in the creek here. I don't think you have to for this specific shot. And of course, a good idea for any type of visual effects shot is that you try to match the grain of the original footage and try to make that all look cohesive. So you could go in here for a quick fix and do match grain plug in. So you drop this match grain on your cloud footage. You can change preview to final output, and you can change noise source layer to your original footage. Basically what that's going to try to do is take the grain kind of pattern and apply it to this cloud layer. So it's just going to kind of blend those things together. You could also put grain over the whole thing. So that is how you replace a sky. It's one of many ways you could do it. All right, and finally we're going to take a look at an example of rotoscoping. I'm going to show you real quick this shot that was in a short film of mine called Cookie Dough Disaster that I did with my son. And basically we take a shot of him walking out onto the street with this gun contraption he's built, and he in the background can see a giant cookie dough monster walking. Okay, if you want to watch that, you can watch it on YouTube. Let's say we want to put any number of things behind him. How would we do that? Okay, we don't have green screen footage. We don't have anything like that. So basically our option is to rotoscope. Okay, and that's what I did with this shot. Obviously, the first option you would have is you could, I would typically duplicate my footage, turn off the bottom one, use my pen tool, and basically you're just going to create a mask around your object, person, or whatever it may be. And you can see there, that's a horrible mask job. Don't do it like that. But just to show you, then you would hit MM on your keyboard, set a mask path, and then you would go in and basically frame by frame, you're going to animate these positions and get it to line up. That is how a lot of rotoscope jobs go, is you got to just go in there and you create little sections for each part of, you could create a section for the shoe, create a section for the thigh and for the shin. You just frame by frame make that happen. It's not a super fun job, but there's people that are phenomenal at it. Just like the content aware fill tool we used a while ago, After Effects has created some tools that we can use to make this process a little bit faster. It's still kind of frame by frame, but this tool can help a lot. So this is called the Roto Brush tool. It's up here, and you see this little brush with this little guy. This is your Roto Brush tool. And before we get into the Roto Brush tool, I would encourage you, learn to mask out things by yourself. So learn how to make your pen tool work for you and to create all these little shapes. That's a super important skill to have. But if you just need a quick roto for something, this is a great tool. So you can use it for just about anything, but it has its limitations as well. So we're going to double click on our footage, and you can see I have this kind of familiar paintbrush looking icon, similar to what you'd find in Photoshop. I'm going to hit Command and click and drag to make that a little bit smaller. And I'm just going to start painting what I want to be selected. You can see After Effects does a really good job kind of selecting those similar pixels. And you can hit Alt and it becomes a red minus, and then you can kind of paint out the negative stuff that you want. So the things you don't want to be included in the rotoscope. So you could also go in here and do the part of his gun and the cable for that. I'm not going to worry about that just for the sake of time, but you can do that. And so now we have this shape that I've painted out, and you can see down here After Effects has started making these points of reference for that. And if we start going backwards frame by frame, you'll see that After Effects is trying to guess. You can see right here it's trying to guess the interpolation by analyzing that footage. And so I'm going to start going in here and just adjusting the guesswork that After Effects does. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to Command and arrow keys kind of go through that. You can see it's trying to guess. It's doing a pretty good job. Once we get to the movement of the legs walking, we'll have to do a lot of manual work. Go in here and adjust. Make sure it's not selecting things you don't want to be part of the rotoscope. We're going to hit Command, arrow keys, and we can kind of go through this some more. You'll typically see kind of in some of these areas where you have maybe a light and dark edge kind of against each other, it'll start to kind of lose the track of the similar pixels there. Just keep moving through this. So now that we have some more significant movement, we're going to start to see this become a little bit more involved. Just keep moving through that timeline and seeing what our footage does there. And just like Photoshop, you also have these other options here, view options, that you can kind of look at. They let you see a little bit kind of clearer what you're selecting. I kind of like this one myself. Continuing to work our way through this, removing the things we don't want to be part of the rotoscope and adding the things we do. You can see down here it's creating these little points of reference. With some of that movement, the rotoscope jumps to include the street. So I'm going to remove that. You can see as these pixels start to get similar, it's hard for the program to guess. And also I should say too that the higher quality footage you have makes a difference for the quality of the rotoscope as well. And just like every plugin, sometimes it doesn't work great, sometimes it does. You'll notice as we start to get these kind of motion blurs here, it can get a little tricky too. You can see here we got really similar pixels in the gray of the shoe and in the street, and so it's not as easy to guess what it's doing there. See, same here, but you just kind of got to go in there and adjust. Some motion blur here. It's kind of hard to see what's going on there for the program. Doing a pretty good job. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm not too concerned with that. And we are good. Okay, so now important part of this, we need to freeze this. So it's going to go through there, it's going to freeze all those frames so that they can't change on us. And we could be a lot more meticulous about this. For the sake of the tutorial, we're just going to leave it at that. So now if I scrub back through this, you can see does a pretty good job. It's a little bit messy in a few places, but not bad. We can go in here and kind of clean that up. We can adjust our contrast and our feather amount. We can adjust shift edge so we can kind of shrink that up a little bit, or reduce chatter, kind of get rid of some of those edges. There's some options here where you can use motion blur. And then when we turn back on our original footage, you can see that we don't see anything. So let's try to put some footage in there. So let's do maybe like an explosion or something. All right, so I'm bringing in this explosion from Video Copilot Action Essentials. I'm sure most of you have seen this set of footage before. I'm just going to kind of move it to where it feels like it's on the ground. I'm going to change the blending mode to screen. So now you can see how we were able to add something behind him. Now it does not look great, obviously. There's a lot of work we need to do to blend the explosion with our shot, color correct it, add some kind of light bleeding around his legs, lots of different things like that. But you can see how, even though it's not the perfect rotoscope, it does a pretty good job of making it look like that fire is actually behind him. That's how you rotoscope with the roto brush, and you can, like I said, you can do that with the mask as well. You can do it with Mocha. You can do it with lots of other programs, but this is just a quick way you can do it in Adobe After Effects.